Hey, here's a question. Do you live in an HOA community? Georgia is a hotbed for them. And our senior investigative reporter, Rebecca Lindstrom, has been looking into what kind of accountability HOAs have literally for years now, Rebecca. And some change could be on the way?
I give a deep, deep sigh because every time we talk about this issue, we hear from people in our community. And I talk with folks who say, my HOA is great. You know what? I live in an HOA and it is great. Mm-hmm. But your HOA and your board is only as good as the people who currently serve on it, which means you could move into a neighborhood, the community is run very well, and then a new board gets in place. They have just different attitudes, tones that they set for the community, and then things start to spiral. Or you hire a new property management company, and things start to change. And so I always tell people, I'm so happy you live in an HOA that you are proud to be in, but 5 years from now, it could be a very different story. And where are the safeguards for you when that happens? And so even people who say, I love my HOA, it's perfect the way it is, I think the way that they need to look at some of these legislative ideas is not, hey, but mine's is great, so everyone else must be too, but do we have safeguards in place so if things do go wrong, I still have rights as a homeowner to try to mitigate those issues.
And perhaps there's no greater example of something going wrong for someone than the woman you met about 6 years ago.
This was really one of the first HOA stories that I did, and I was just baffled when I walked away from her home after hearing how much she had spent to still end up losing her home. And this is one of those issues that's going to be addressed with SB 406 that has been introduced last week. And I don't know, do we want to just go ahead and show
Let's set it up with
what
her
we're
story.
talking about?
Yeah. Let's listen in.
Okay, here's me calling.
When Patricia Quigley calls her HOA's property management company, she gets this message.
The number you dialed is not a working number.
But call from any other phone number.
Thank you for calling Access Management Group.
You're blocked.
9 a.m.
In 2010, Quigley, upset with her HOA's billing process, decided to take a stand and refused to pay her dues, about $700 that year. But that only led to letters from Lozeka and Johansson, the law firm hired to collect on the debt. And that debt had grown.
Walked in, paid him the $2,700, and when I walked out, I said, this is all I owe, right? Yes.
But it wasn't all you owed.
No.
Shortly after, she received another bill for $3,000. She called and sent letters trying to figure out why. But all Quigley says she got in return were cryptic statements, dates with amounts that didn't make any sense to her.
Then here comes the next set of letters. And now it's up to $6,400.
Turns out there were post-judgment legal fees and 18% back interest. So even after she'd paid more than $9,000, she was still somehow behind on her dues. But in 2018, she received the most shocking letter of all, an eviction notice.
You know, you lose your home. That's hard.
But sadness turned to anger when she realized the HOA had purchased her home through foreclosure for $3.24 a year before she was evicted. So you had been living in your house for a year, but you didn't legally own your house.
No.
Quigley says not only did the HOA accept her dues payment on a house she apparently did not own, but allowed her to make another $4,600 in home loan payments before getting kicked out. She paid a debt she did not owe.
Yes, that's for sure, and they don't have to give it back.
Attorney George Nowak has helped craft Georgia's HOA laws since the 1980s. He says Quigley's story is tragic, but it is a tragedy of her own making.
It doesn't happen
In a vacuum.
in a back room in blue smoke and mirrors.
Nowak says the HOA can't win a judgment until the homeowner owes at least $2,000. The court must perform a title search, have the foreclosure posted in the paper for a month, and the homeowner served.
They brought this on because they ignored all of the requests to pay. They didn't show up at the trial most times.
You want some more?
Quigley admits she never did go to court, not understanding the process or the stakes involved. But Phoenicia Law, a homeowner in Douglas County, did try to fight the HOA's claims against her.
When they garnished my bank account, I was unemployed.
Law owns a home in the Rosewood Community Association. She received a payment plan to catch up on her dues, but there were a few added fees she didn't understand.
I didn't know how it was stacking up. I knew.
You just knew it was a lot.
I knew it was a lot.
She disputed the bill in court, appealing to the judge for help.
These exhibits I sent to the court.
But court records say Law's dispute arrived one day too late. So the judge couldn't consider issues like this check, an HOA payment mailed in vain.
Clearly returned the sender 7 times. But
The kicker, after she lost the case, she was told to mail her settlement payment to that same address. And this time, the check didn't come back.
While it's portrayed as cold and you're taking advantage of the homeowner, it's the exact opposite. People who don't pay their assessments are having everybody else in the community subsidize them.
Georgia law fiercely protects an HOA's right to collect what is owed, but neither of these women deny their debt. What they do have a problem with is the inability to mediate and ask questions when a disagreement arises.
A lot of times, people can't afford to fight. They just have to walk away.
According to the Community Association Institute, 6 states have some type of ombudsman to help educate and facilitate these discussions, and several states require mediation before a lawsuit is filed. Georgia isn't one of them. After Quigley was evicted, the Reveal learned her HOA sold the house to an employee at the law firm involved in her foreclosure.
That really bothers me because how could that not be illegal?
According to public documents, Legacy Investment Properties, a company that didn't legally exist at the time, bought the house for $1 and a portion of the profits. The woman behind the LLC then reactivated her real estate license and sold the home to a new family.
I've never heard a story like that before.
Well, the HOA and law firm recouped their money, and the LLC likely made some.
This cat's tougher than...
Quigley ended up homeless, losing tens of thousands of dollars in equity.
The courts have said there is no legitimate reason for not paying. If you believe the association has done you wrong, then sue the association.
Pay it.
And sue the association.
Wow.
I think what is so troubling for me watching that is that story would be just as true today as it was 6 years ago.
Few protections.
Nothing has really changed. So there are about a dozen bills right now in the legislature to try to kind of tackle this in its own unique way. I would say the most comprehensive right now is SB 406. And it would, as it relates specifically to that story, it would bar anyone with the HOA, the property management company, or the law firm associated from being able to purchase that home at foreclosure. So that element would not be able to happen if this were to pass. It also raises that base threshold for foreclosure from $2,000 to $4,000, and it doesn't allow you to add in any of those fines or fees to get to that amount. It has to be truly unpaid dues. And I know in Nevada, one of the things that is required under their law is you actually have to keep a separate ledger for your dues as opposed to any of your violations, fines, fees, things like that. So when you're going to the court and you're saying this is what you owe your HOA, you're going to the court with that ledger that's related to the dues specifically. Now, if you're not cutting your grass or you're not following the ordinance of your HOA, I don't think there's anyone in this equation that says you shouldn't be held accountable for that. I think you get into this bigger question that lawmakers and really the community reaching out to their lawmakers are going to have to address is, should something like putting up a fence when maybe you weren't supposed to or you didn't go through the right process, should that be allowed to kick you out of your house? Should that be allowed to make you lose all the equity that you might have put into paying on that mortgage for 5, 10, 15 years? Because when your house goes up for foreclosure, I mean, like, that's it. Whatever you've paid towards that mortgage is gone. So SB 406 does a lot of things, but it specifically addresses that issue in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people out there watching would argue that the HOAs help property value, help neighborhood standards, to your point here. Are we hearing from folks on the other side of this argument who maybe are against this Senate bill. I mean, is this a bipartisan issue? Do we think it's going to pass, or is it cheap talk?
Well, okay, so I don't
sorry,
wanna,
that was 5
I don't want to
questions.
jinx it, but what I will say that is different about this is it is sponsored and kind of pushed in large part by Senator Matt Brass. He is a Republican. Most of the efforts that have been made in the past have been by Democrats. We do have Republican-controlled legislature, so whenever you can get a Republican to spearhead something and it is bipartisan, you certainly stand a better chance. There have been a lot of public hearings leading up to this, and I know that the people behind SB 406 have tried to be proactive in reaching out to property management companies and other organizations to say, hey, what do you think of this? What's the resistance going to be? But I do know that there is a legislative day coming up in about a week and a half with Community Associates Institute. They are one of the largest, best organized nonprofits that tries to educate and lobby on behalf of the interests of the HOA boards, the property management companies. And I mean, I reached out to them last week, and the response was kind of mixed. I think that because some of these bills try to do a lot of different things, you're going to find support for one element, maybe not support for the other. One of their concerns I think that we're going to hear is that they do want to make these HOA boards register with the Secretary of State's office. So for once, it's going to be giving state oversight. These HOA boards are going to have to be submitting their financials. Not that the state's going to sit there and audit them, but that way then if you're going to your board and they're not giving you a copy of your financials, you can go to the Secretary of State's office and say, hey, I'm having a problem. I want to do an open records request and get my financials, and get it that way. But also they'll be creating this mediation board, an investigative board with the state. So when you have a problem, you could go to that first instead of a costly court process. I think that there is some sense that that's redundant and that people could just go through the court. I mean, you heard Mr. Nowak there talking about, hey, just go to court.
Right.
And that's expensive.
I imagine when you air these stories, you get a lot of tips.
I do.
Where can folks contact you if they have a story they want to share?
They can always contact us at investigates@11alive.com. I mean, a lot of times we just look at it in the trend. You can't do every HOA story
Sure.
out there, but the trends are important to hear what the concerns are that are going on in your community.
Rebecca, that was fascinating. I had not seen that story yet. It aired 6 years ago. I think there were a lot of jaw-dropping moments in that. Perhaps the biggest one for me was finding out somebody from the law firm was able to purchase that house and turn around and sell it, making a pretty penny, I'm sure.
I think the real fear also is that maybe there's just someone that you don't like in your neighborhood, and maybe they are a problem homeowner, and then you see this as a way to get rid of them and then turn the house over to someone that you like better.
Wow.
And I mean, that's just not what the homeownership American dream is about to a lot of folks.
All right, you're going to be watching the Senate bill, see what happens. Thank you so
Thanks.
much for your time, Rebecca.